I'd like to go over your training programs with you now. Everything that you see on my screen, the documents, I should say, will be on Moodle for you to refer to. But I would like to go over them to go over my expectations, to clarify the instructions, and hopefully resolve as many questions as I can. Now, if you do have questions, if you want me to look them over, please email them to me. So you can work alone or in pairs. The final program must be typed. Must contain all of the following sections we're about to go over. It'll be due the last day of classes. That is Wednesday, April 29th. It will be due via email. One submission per group. You'll have a Word document as well as a Microsoft Excel document. So rather than waiting for it to upload through Moodle and possibly having duplicate submissions or missing a file, please submit it all through email on or before Wednesday, April 29th. What you will do is you will, again, working as a pair or individually, you will select an NCAA athlete to assess and to program for. Essentially, you are, can I draw? Whatever. Essentially, you are creating a case study for this athlete. You're going to assume this athlete has no injuries or illnesses or limitations, and assume you have unlimited equipment and you have the ability to work with them 3 to 4 days a week. So you will program your resistance training 3 to 4 days a week. You will create a 16-week macro cycle consisting of 4 mesocycles, 4 blocks of work. Each mesocycle will consist of 4 one-week microcycles. For this program, I want you to use blocks with ratios of 3 to 1. So 3 loading microcycles and 1 deloading microcycle. You will select 2 phases from general preparation and 2 phases from specific preparation as you see necessary for your athlete. And this will be your 4 mesocycles. So if you haven't already done so, you should definitely watch and take notes on the periodization lecture before you attempt to do this program. If you've already seen it, just to remind you, the phases that we went over in that periodization lecture were muscular endurance, muscular hypertrophy, general strength, maximal strength, and then power. And then power was possibly either a strength speed, so moving heavier loads at fast speeds, or a speed strength, moving light loads at very fast speeds. So what you assign for your athlete is going to depend upon their needs. A football player will likely need something very different than, say, a cross-country runner. So part 1 is the introduction. Describe your selected athlete, the sport. What year are they? Are they a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior? If it's a team sport, indicate the position. So if it's football, are they a lineman? Are they a back? If it's basketball, are they a center? Are they a forward? Are they a guard? If it's baseball, are they a pitcher? Are they an outfielder? And so on and so forth. Describe the physiological demands of the sport. Is it an anaerobic sport? Is it an aerobic sport? Is it a combination thereof? What energy system is critical for performance in that sport? Is it anaerobic glycolysis? Is it aerobic metabolism? Is it the phosphagen system? etc. What are the speed, strength, power, and agility demands of that sport as well? Make sure you describe those to your best of the ability. A lot of this information can be found on the National Strength and Conditioning website. They have lots of normative values for various athletes. They also describe the bioenergetic and force-producing capabilities of that sport. So if you type in National Strength and Conditioning, normative data, you come up with a lot of results. This should bring us to some information for women's basketball, the tests that were conducted, etc. And you can get all of these articles through the Coastal Carolina Library if you email a librarian if you are unable to get them. Let's look at some more information. Some field tests that have been done. It's an excerpt from a book. Anyways, there is some information available for you if you are unsure of it yourself and you want to make sure you're correct. The purpose, what aspects of performance are you looking to improve upon the most? Specifically, we're looking here for what are the long-term or outcome objectives of your 16-week macro cycle program. So are you trying to increase your athletes' 40-yard dash, their vertical jump, their, 5-10-5 test, so their change of ability to change direction and agility? Are you trying to increase how far they throw a shot put if they're a shot putter? What sport-specific values or what sport-specific attributes are you trying to improve? Part 3 is testing. Select 2 appropriate tests for each mesocycle objective. For many of the blocks or the mesocycles, you're probably going to be selecting one for upper body and one for lower body. So let's say that your first mesocycle is muscular endurance. How are you going to test for muscular endurance? Let's say your last mesocycle is power. How are you going to test for muscular power? So choose 2 tests for each mesocycle. So you're going to have 8 unique tests all together for this program. Create some appropriate values for each test. So essentially make some values up, but make sure they're realistic to your athlete. And then these tests you select are going to be tests that you can work on improving through strength training and should be easily testable within a strength conditioning facility. And then finally, set some goals. So for each 4-week mesocycle, what type of improvements in those 2 tests are you looking to see? So for example, if in the first mesocycle your goal is muscular endurance and you selected push-ups for the upper body and you selected an anaerobic Wingate test for the lower body, what type of improvements are you looking to see in that 4-week period of time? Next is the program rationale. So for each block, again, there's 4 blocks, aka mesocycles. List the exercises you selected and how they relate to your athlete's sport and or position. Next, what is the load or the relative intensity that you plan to use? These will be based upon the individual microcycles and the particular phase of periodization that each block falls into. For example, in sticking with muscular endurance, what is the optimal or what is the effective percent of 1 RM to use for muscular endurance? You know it's less than 65% of the 1 RM. So what is the range? Well, if you look at the recommendations, it's about 40 to 60% of the 1 RM. What is your starting microcycle percentage going to be, and how are you going to increase it through the microcycles? You're going to need to do that for every mesocycle that you select. Exercise volume. This is going to be the sets and repetitions. Again, it's going to differ from mesocycle to mesocycle, and possibly also from week to week. So what is the appropriate set and rep scheme for each phase of periodization? And finally, how much rest are you going to provide in between exercises? Again, this is going to vary from phase to phase. So this program rationale is going to help you to decide what your variables are going to be in your program. And then you're actually going to design that program. So for each training day, again, there will be 3 to 4 days per week, depending upon what you feel your athlete needs. You're going to list the sets, the exercises, the repetitions, the intensity, and the rest periods. This will be the complete training prescription for the individual training sessions. So it's important that you review the training principles, make sure you review periodization, and I'm looking for the appropriate manipulation of these variables in your prescription. There is a spreadsheet that will be put on Moodle for you to use. Let's take a look at this. So here's where you will create your program. This is on Moodle for you. So what are your macrocycle goals? What are those outcomes that you answered? And then what are your 4 phases of mesocycles? So mesocycle 1, objective. For example, because we've been talking about it, muscular endurance. Mesocycle 2, objective. Mesocycle 3, objective. Mesocycle 4, objective. Once you have that, you know you're working in a 3-to-1 ratio of microcycles. Let's zoom in. So you know microcycle 1, 2, and 3 are going to be loading. So from microcycle 1 to microcycle 2, we're going to progress the overload. From 2 to 3, progress the overload. And week 4 will be a deload. Remember that the exercises that are appropriate for one mesocycle may not be appropriate for the next mesocycle. So ensure you're picking appropriate exercises for the various mesocycle objectives. This falls under the principle of variation and the principle of specificity. So mesocycle 1 will be the least specific. Mesocycle 4 will be the most specific. Some of the exercises should vary from mesocycle to mesocycle. Maybe not all of them, but definitely some of them. Then you will program your days. So you can see each mesocycle consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Assume day 1 is Monday. If it is a rest day, then just leave it blank. In this first column, you'll put the exercise. For example, squat. Let's zoom in on this day. So for example, the squat. In the second column, the volume prescription. 3 sets, 12 repetitions. In the third column, the percentage of the 1 repetition max that you wish to use. Say 65%. And in the fourth column, the rest intervals in between sets. 1 minute. Now, if you're a little confused about what percent of the 1 RM goes with how many repetitions, there's a great resource for that. It's called exrx.net. And in this exrx.net, you put in 1 repetition maximal calculator, and you can calculate your 1 RM. So if you want to do this for yourself, let's say you bench press 100, you bench press it 10 times, and it calculates your 1 rep max. And then it also tells you what load would be used at 50% of your 1 rep max, 55%, etc. Now you don't need to put in the actual loads, but you do need to put in a percentage of the 1 RM. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can see a table here that gives you the estimated reps at a percent of the 1 RM. So if you were to do 75% of your 1 repetition maximum, it would be estimated that you could only do 10 repetitions if you were going to failure. So you can use this table to help you decide where you want to be on this percentage of the 1 RM. Now remember, most of the time when you are doing these exercises and programming these exercises, you're not going to failure. So if you're doing 10 repetitions, doing it at 75% of the 1 RM would be inappropriate, because your first set, you would likely do 10 repetitions, and that 10th repetition would bring you to muscular failure. So that 10 repetition, if you were doing a bench press, would be a real grind. You'd bring that bar down, you'd finally lock it out. And then you wouldn't be able to do an 11th repetition. So a pretty good rule of thumb is to start about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or so percentage points beneath this estimated percentage, and then to work your way up over the course of many microcycles. So, for example, in our program here, we put in 3 sets of 12 at 65% the 1 RM. Let's go back to exrx.net, and we can see that 65% of the 1 RM was probably too high to start at, because between 60 to 65% is going to reach failure. So instead, we'll start at 55% of the 1 RM. And then the next time we squat, we'll get to 58% of the 1 RM. The next time we squat, maybe 60% of the 1 RM. This will take us pretty close to failure. And then week 4 will be our deload week, so we'll drop back down pretty low to like 50%. So there's an example of how you can progress the intensity over the course of a mesocycle for 1 exercise. You may here increase the volume as well, so do 4 sets of 12. So remember, you need to progress the overload. So you're going to program your various days. 3 to 4 days per week is the training frequency. Here we have weekly notes. So anything that you want to add in. Maybe you're going to do some exercises as a superset. A superset means you do 1 exercise and then go immediately do the next exercise and then rest. So for example, in my own training, I often do agonist-antagonist supersets. A very simple example would be biceps and triceps. I'll do a set of curls, biceps, then I'll immediately go and do a set of tricep press downs. then I will rest, and then I will repeat it. So that would be a superset. So use this weekly notes to put in any notes that you wish to put in. Maybe exercises are to be done as supersets. Maybe exercises are to be done with a certain tempo. So a slow tempo, moderate tempo, a fast or an explosive tempo, etc. So use that weekly notes for that purpose. One last resource I want to show you on exrx.net is the exercise directory. And in this exercise directory is a large volume of exercises split up into muscle groups. So let's say that we want to work the hamstrings. Here we have thighs, here we have hamstrings. We can see there are a variety of mechanisms in which we can use to work them. We can use barbells, cables, dumbbells, levers, so various machines, Smith machine, bands, body weight, etc., etc. So let's say that we're all kind of home right now, or a lot of us are home without any gym access. And how do we want to work our hamstrings from home? Maybe we're going to do a hanging inverse leg curl. Let's see what that is. We'll do an inverse leg curl. So here we have, looks a lot like a glute ham raise, but anyways, here we have an inverse leg curl. So you have a variety of exercises to look at. You have instructions of how to do the exercise. Oh, it doesn't look like my page is fully loading. You have instructions of how to do the exercise. You have ways to make it easier and ways to make it, here's the preparation, okay. Ways to make it easier, ways to make it more difficult, etc. So this is a great resource because we only went over a small list of all the available exercises that you have. And this is not an exhaustive list right here, but it is rather extensive. So this is another great resource to use. So again, this will be due Wednesday, April 29th. The instructions will be on Moodle. The template will be on Moodle. You will submit it through email. You can work in pairs if you so wish.